Yes, I am ready.
So thank you everybody for coming to the privacy talk. So I'm so honored to invite Chris this moment as the interviewee. Chris is the lead in the interesting initiative, IEEE Digital Privacy. So we are having the conversation about this move today through the interview. So thank you for having Chris this moment.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite.
So first of all, I'd like to introduce his profile. Chris is the CEO, BlockFrame Inc., Chair, IEEE Digital Privacy Initiative, Chair, IEEE Blockchain Initiative Security and Privacy, published author, inventor, co-founder and the blockchain development community, founder of International Alliance of Trust Chains, blockchain SME to the state of Colorado legislator, the host of new Cyber Frontier podcast, and research partner with Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, Arizona State University, University of Colorado, University of Denver, and Colorado State University. Mr. Gong is a certified information system security professional by the International Information System Security Certification Consortium and certified project management professional by the Project Management Institute, and has over 25 years in industry designing cryptographic applications for cyber physical embedded systems, and has worked to secure supply chains for several leading manufacturers. He is an ex-Navy nuclear engineer who has also spent several years in academia as director for cybersecurity programs at Colorado Technical University. He holds a bachelor's degree in computer engineering, Master of Business Administration, Master of Computer Science, and Computer System Security from Colorado Technical University. His PhD work in cybersecurity engineering at the University of Colorado at Colorado Springs engages several community groups and international organizations in support of research for the state of Colorado to enable security and privacy for government records. So again, it's very appreciated to having a conversation. So yeah,
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. So yeah, let's move on to the agenda today. I'm so excited to have a conversation with you because you have a very we have a work in a very interesting space, especially for blockchain and privacy. So could you share about your careers? Why did you start to work at the blockchain and privacy this moment?
Well, it seems like one of those things that almost fell into it, and security in general for many reasons for many years working in industry. Security was that black box that people and I myself almost ignored a lot because it seemed too complex. And I remember the first time I got pulled into it, it was under the terms that it was something else. I was trying to fix a problem where they had a mechanical fire in a piece of equipment because somebody had basically hacked in across the network and turned on something physical that started a fire. And they asked me to make sure that that couldn't happen again. And we didn't even call it cybersecurity then. It was the Mine Protection Agency in the United States that wanted to make sure that physical damage couldn't happen again. And at the time, that was so long ago that we just unplugged the network and didn't let the equipment then be on the network. But that isn't a problem we can just do anymore because everybody's so interconnected. So working into security was kind of the start is how do you secure equipment? And then privacy has always been like this bolt on to security, just like security is often a bolt on to a technology operation. And it wasn't until literally probably 5 or 6 years ago that I got pulled into privacy because I was implementing the security around government systems for the state of Colorado. And I kept asking my stateside representatives, we know, I would tell them, okay, we know how to secure this or make this information public or make it private, but tell me now, which information do I make public and which information do I make private? And nobody knew. And I kept asking the questions around, well, what do I have to implement with my security to get privacy for citizens' records? Who is making the decision on a driver's license or a health record for the state? It's going into your database. Who's going to tell me what I need to secure and how I need to do it? And they didn't have anybody to answer those questions. So I started moving into privacy because I had to ask and answer those questions myself. And looking at that, which tools to use, blockchain kind of came to the top as a distribution of trust. If we can use the tool to distribute trust, can we use the tool to distribute the extraction of trust and thus the confidentiality, as well as the ability to show that it was enacted? So we're looking at using the tool of blockchain for both of those to implement proof of operation, but obfuscate and have confidentiality around the operation itself. And thus we're implementing privacy for records. And that's kind of how it came into it, just as a technologist and actually implementing it. And then now I chair the Digital Privacy Initiative, and literally got connected to them through my work in Colorado. I spoke a couple places, and they're like, they came to me and said, Future Directions Committee, FDC, said, one of their representatives said, can you lead this digital privacy we want to start up? Just because we don't have anybody else that's really working in the area that comes from that technology background. And that's how I got to where I'm at with digital privacy.
Yeah, thank you for sharing your interest in the story. I suppose the blockchain is one of the interest in a technical field, and it involves to protect the privacy, the protections. So why did you came up the idea with the blockchain? Is there any signals that you decided to bet on the blockchain as a technical background?
I don't think I bet on the blockchain as blockchain is a solution. Blockchain is just another tool. And I always, for years, I helped implement security in cyber physical systems. And there was very limited number of operations that we actually do in security. Identify data, verify the data hasn't changed, so integrity, authenticate actors, set up sessions, and then encrypt data in transport or at rest. There's very few applications. They're just done 1,000 different ways. And what was always missing for years was the distribution of trust, which we in the security industry have used certificates and hierarchy, certificate authorities, but we don't trust somebody else's certificate authority. So it didn't work as a distributed trust between people that don't trust each other. So now when we looked at the tool for blockchain that came in the the 2008-9 paper released by Satoshi Nakamoto, that said, hey, we can make a currency. And it said, but what they looked at is this is a distribution of trust. So it added that tool to our security palette that says we should be able to take this tool and distribute trust in any way we need to. Now we just need to build it out so it's operational. And that is appeared to be the hardest part, is making it operational, because the first applications weren't scalable very well. And that's the big part that we've looked at for the last probably 6 years, is scaling blockchain and we understand now how to use it to distribute trust, but now can we scale it to the size needed for a state program?
Yeah, I agree that the blockchain is been very typical features that they have it, and we can should increase the kind of these moves to implement it into the societies in many ways. So I would like to explore the role of your work at the IEEE Digital Privacy. as you mentioned, you've been founded and in a in chair of this new initiative. So could you share your role on the IEEE digital privacy?
Sure. We're in now our second full year, but our third year of operation, because we started out as a small project under Future Directions, and then we became an initiative in the beginning of 2022. And 2023 is our second year. So we've been growing as far as building the community around digital privacy, trying to understand all the pieces. So the first year, I mean, I came in with my work from state programs saying, well, I need to answer these questions, and I had a set of 20 or so questions I need to answer, but it was a bigger picture than me. It was a societal question. It was a technologist question. It was a question for a community of people. So we started asking those questions, and in the first year of the project, we had a workshop where we said, okay, let's see, are we asking all the questions, and pull the industry across IEEE, all the different organizational units that handle different technologies, and say, is there questions we're missing? Is there questions that we need to be asking? And now our list has expanded to like 70 of those. So that is the technology areas, which we call the dimensions of privacy. And a lot of times they're polar opposites, like public and private, like opt-in versus opt-out. They're polar opposites, and that's a dimension of a decision making. And then in the second year, we looked at, or in the first year of the full project, we organized the different working groups. So we organized 3 industry subgroups for automotive, for energy, and for healthcare. And we just picked those because they were the ones that seemed to be the most in need of privacy under our scope. I'm sure there's many more. That was just kind of the first 3 we chose. And then we have a policy and legislative group that looks at how are the policies organized and and interfacing with government organizations that might make legislative actions on policy. And they're starting those conversations. They're starting to attend meetings with legislators and conferences and whatnot, and put together a map around using privacy and how it fits together. Then we have a frameworks working group that looked at frameworks around the data for individual users, and we have a standards working group that has just started up, and then some outreach as another. So we have altogether, I think, 7 working groups, and put together a community presence with IEEE, put together a web page. We have quite a bit of engagement. People like yourself on there speaking at podcast to get people's awareness. And then we have it all call for volunteers and people coming in that have an interest in one of those areas or furthering the state of the art in one of those areas. And that's what we're doing with digital privacy, but focusing on bringing the technologist and the individual privacy for individuals. IEEE is an organization based on individual membership. It's not paid for by governments or companies. It's individuals. 450,000 members to IEEE all contribute a little bit of money annually toward a membership. So we can say our money then is in search of is the betterment of individuals' privacy. And that's kind of a big difference, because a lot of the initiatives that already existed were about government regulation, lawyers trying to understand the law and policy, or big companies trying to manage and organize data and protect against compromise. And really nothing was based that we had found at the time on the individual. So that's kind of our position with digital privacy, is to focus on our membership base, which is individually vested in the privacy of their own content.
Yeah, so you are working almost 1 year. Just you did a lot of the activities initiative within the group. So did you feel any change in United States of the atmosphere related to the privacy initiative? Because I think we are becoming the sensitive of the privacy, your data, and the technology at this moment. So do you have any idea of that?
Yeah. Well, even though we've started I started my works from the United States. I'm a United States citizen. The IEEE is really a global organization. So our effort isn't isn't solely focused in the United States. We have a good bit of our contributing members in the first year were in the United States, and we'll say Europe, United States, the West. But we're, this year, our second year, we're doing a big outreach into, kind of other parts of the world, because one of the big things we identified early on in the initiative is that the social aspects that govern privacy and the decisions that people make on privacy are very different for different parts of the world. People view privacy differently. And even between the United States and Europe, our two biggest contributors regionally, geographically in the first year, the United States is very in support of corporations and the protection of their rights to use data, where Europe is and GDPR very much focuses on the protection of the individual consumer, almost in opposition to the companies and the company's rights to their data, saying that the user, the data target, the person the data is about, has certain rights to the data, even though the company might be collecting it. And those two polar opposites are very regional, geographical focused. And then even in Asia, there seems to be a third that's more social, and the consciousness of the society has more rights to the decision making, excuse me, on who makes the decision on what your data, which data is private, which data is public, how it's handled. And it comes down to it that a big part, the big unknown, isn't how to implement or how to do privacy. It's how society anticipates that we're supposed to handle privacy. And those are a set of decisions that we can even outline what the decisions are, but who makes those decisions and who they're allowed to make it for becomes assignable and changeable in different geography around the world in a big way. And there's just different ideological points of view that come with the social changes in regional, geographic regions of the world.
Yeah, that's very interesting because of our country is also become a sensitive, especially for the personal information, how the company to deal with it and how the government has been reacted of any privacy breach. So in this sense, you published with your team about the synergetic approach to digital privacy. On your documents, you mentioned about the several technologies such as blockchain or some of the new technical innovations. I think privacy is one of the very important factors against of the technical innovations or received innovation for the future. So what do you think about it's necessary to achieve this document, the new technology with the privacy?
I think one of the things that that document was kind of early on that we really achieved with that is saying, well, we're a technologist group, the IEEE. We have lots of technological solutions. We have lots of people that want to know how to apply them and want to apply them for the greater good. And that's one of the mottos in IEEE is, to the greater good of the human race with technology, applying it. So identifying some of the areas that the initiative would focus on, a big one was technology. Hey, here's all this list of technologies that our members are saying, I want to apply this, I want to use this, and they all have ideas about how they can be used. Now let's get together and say, where are they used? Who's going to use them? How are they going to be used? How can we integrate that with existing works out there? Privacy by design, and make sure that we align with the common regulatory bodies in their terminology. We'll say, we don't want to reinvent the wheel. The first big part was, identifying the pieces, but it had to start with, what are we interested in? We're interested in technology. And that's what he said, some of those technologies listed in there, but also that we're interested in the governance of it, the control of it, and saying, how do we establish that in a neutral manner? So that really rang through in that initial paper, is that we want to be the neutral kind of word and not take a side. And that's where, my last talk about the geographical change, changes to policy and to idealism came in, is once we started getting all the pieces together from across the world and all the people, those different voices came in. And that's what we've been addressing for the whole kind of second year, is listening to all the voices and saying, how do we make a model now of how all these voices that come in impact privacy as a practice, and pulling those together. And at some point in the future, we might turn that around and say, okay, here's what we've put together. Now let's push that back out to standards and support either IEEE Standards Association, which we already are in talks with, and we have a standards working group. But at this point, we're kind of just cataloging what's out there to be maybe the master index of technology, privacy, standards organizations. Here's a one-stop shop for everything. And that's really, I think, where that initial publication was leading us and why it exists.
Yeah, that sounds very good. Since a lot of the voice should be inclusive in the processes of to create a more practical initiative. So in this sense, it's a second years of the digital, IEEE, the Digital Privacy Initiative. So you have any practice, the planning in this year, because a lot of the people is interested in this space, then how we can involve in these new actions together. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, the different working groups I talked about when you had, I think the first question you asked, we'd love to have people join the working groups that are interested in any of those, or the industry verticals. We have the three of them, like I said, but join and listen to a couple of them, sample a couple places. If you'd like to talk to some of the leadership, and we'll help you see based on your skill set where you might fit in. We're happy to have one-on-ones with new people as they come in. We usually actually like to do that. Quinn Hawkins is my program manager with Future Directions. She's the full-time staff and does great job in coordinating the efforts. And I kind of, because I'm a volunteer, I try to be engaged where necessary, but I'm a full-time job somewhere else, and that's what pays the bills. The IEEE is just my passion coming out. How can we impact the world? How can we give something to the world that doesn't exist? We have all this great technology, we have all these great minds. Now let's put it together, and that's really where I feel that we're going to benefit from. And we'd love to have your particular area of expertise, whatever that is, and align it to different areas. We don't even mind starting something else and having different sub focuses. We have people doing technical writing, and even event planning. We have had an event the first year as a small project. Last year we attended events for other people all over the world, and we're looking at putting together an event late this year, and then having a kind of an inaugural conference in the third year of the initiative for digital privacy. And we've had great participation. Check out our website at digitalprivacy.ieee.org. There's lots of great content on there, lots of people from the group speaking about their different areas of expertise and their involvement, and what they're taking from, and even what their passion is, and how how you might align with them. We have some great people already involved. So looking for more of that support, and to even bring a different perspective. And especially, how can we get the word out in Japan and Asia, and talk to some of the people outside of that the United States, European focus that we've been in a little bit over the first 2 years.
Yeah, that's a great notice. And I think it's a good phrase to work together with the diversifications of the backgrounds, the experiences it involves in together. That's a good initiative to make a standardized approach in the industrial proposal. So, and finally, I'd like to ask you about the message to the listeners, since you have many interesting experiences until to establish the new initiative, because the blockchain is the very promising technology. However, a lot of people is not talking about blockchain and privacy, but you are leader of this movement at this moment. So could you share your insight from experiences and your expectations to the listeners and audiences from this voice?
Yeah, I think blockchain and privacy is kind of a potential promise, and it basically is, like I discussed earlier, the locking in of distributed trust. If we can distribute trust between data items, then we can arrange those data items so they're either public or private, and verify that the trust is maintained. And that's really the promise that blockchain can give us. And we can't say that it's the one-stop shop and it solves everything, but it adds that extra tool. Um, for years we've had cryptography for hundreds of years. Literally, Rome, they did an off by the Caesar cipher, and the concept has been around for a while, but it wasn't until the early 70s that we got asymmetric cryptography. And then it isn't until the late 2000s that we got distributed trust that's operational in blockchain, and it adds that layer of tools on that we can use. And it's, like I said, it's not the one-stop shop, but it's the promise of connecting all the pieces that we know how to do and already know, all the technologies with a distributed, I trust those individual things operating. And that's really the promise, that privacy just becomes the application of using that tool, whether you decide. But we also have to make sure it's used for good, because as we can see in any technology, the voice of technology is usually considered to be morally agnostic. People can use it for good and bad. How can we enable and empower this distributed trust for a positive purpose? And that's really what my passion is, I'm not going to take this technology and try and exploit it to have, millions of dollars in cryptocurrency and market fluctuations and trading and in and out. I'm looking at how can we apply it to security and making our future better with distributed trust.
Yeah, thank you for sharing the insight. I think your experience, then also your insight, is very grateful for the security person as well. Again, there is a very great opportunities and initiative in IEEE digital privacy, then having more people on board and making a more great discussion with you together. So again, thank you for having the conversation, Chris. I'm very pleased to have a talk with you this moment.
All right. Thanks for having me on. Definitely appreciate it.
Thank you.